Welcome back, Mando.
Oh, greetings, Bucketheads. Mevartigar. Welcome to our 300th new Inquisitor introducing episode of Mandovision. I am your host, Narguy Tom. Thank you guys so much for checking out this small, independent Star Wars podcast. So glad you're here. Be sure you're with us on the socials at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. Just Mandovision at Blue Sky. Email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. And remember, a reminder to make sure you are liking, subscribing, following, and sharing the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. All right, Bucketheads, as we stated at the top, this is episode 300. And that's a pretty exciting number for me. That's always been, I don't know why, that's always been a big signifier to issue 300 episodes, right? And I think it stems back to my early comic book collecting days, where like Amazing Spider-Man 300 was like a pinnacle issue of comic books for me. Not only does it introduce Venom, but it just seemed like a massive number. So, I don't know. My mind has always been fixated on that number. So I'm really excited that we are at our 300th episode. It kind of blows my mind that we have made it this far with the show. And that is a thank you to all of you who have supported the show over the years. I'm so glad you're here and you've stuck with us and supported us. It's been a tremendous time for me. I love doing Mandovision, talking about Star Wars and getting to hang out with all of you guys. And I keep hoping I can kind of evolve the show and have a lot of ideas. So please stay tuned. I do hope to implement some of these in the near future. We'll see what happens. The plans have a habit of getting sidetracked very, very frequently on this podcast, unfortunately. But again, thank you guys. Wouldn't be here without you all. And truly, truly appreciate the support over the years. New listeners, old listeners, thank you guys so much. All right, with that being said, we're back into another episode of our Star Wars Rebels rewatch. And this is an episode that introduces us a little bit more. We got a little cameo from the fifth brother. This episode also introduces us to Seventh Sister. And I don't know if I've had a chance to sort of talk or express my sort of feelings on Inquisitors in general. Because visually, they're all interesting and unique and fun to add to the mix of Star Wars. But I'll be honest, and maybe this is me as a longtime fan, as an old fan who's kind of used to Inquisitors not existing for most of my life. Inquisitors are a fairly new addition to Star Wars lore, to Star Wars canon. I've never really understood the Inquisitors. Yes, they serve a purpose. They help Vader and the Emperor track down Jedi who weren't killed at Order 66. Vader's got other things to do. He has to help Palpatine to keep the tight fist of tyranny across the galaxy, so he can't always be the one out there dispatching Jedi, investigating false rumors and things like that. There's other more important things for Lord Vader to be doing. So the Inquisitors sort of fill this void to dispatch wayward and missing Jedi and to investigate rumors and things like that. But they also seem like a group that, in my opinion, I don't understand them. I don't understand the logic of why you want to be an Inquisitor. I understand that at the rise of the Empire, at the fall of the Republic, at some point, Palpatine and Vader, they twist these Jedi and turn them to the dark side and make them essentially dark Jedi, and begin to use them for their purposes. But they're clearly a tool of the Emperor, of Vader. But I don't understand their point of view. I don't understand what they think they can grow and accomplish and become as an Inquisitor. Are they hoping that one day Vader will select one of them to become his apprentice and challenge the Emperor, and that way thus gaining them more power? Or the other way around, do they hope that the Emperor sees the potential in them to promote and elevate them over Vader and eliminate Vader? Because again, the rule of two is firmly in place, so they have to understand that their potential is limited, and intentionally so. They don't have the skill set to defeat Vader, and I think that's intentionally by design. Like interviews with Filoni have stated that the self-propelling double-bladed lightsaber is sort of a cheat because they don't have the skill set required to fight like Maul or Vader does. So, again, I don't understand. I suppose the seduction of the dark side is enough, right? And makes them want to crave this power. They're sort of like a junior version of the Sith, where they're infighting amongst themselves for a position. And as we learn in this episode, the death of the Grand Inquisitors created an opportunity for the remaining Inquisitors to kind of rise above the rest. But again, they just feel sort of limited. And another frustration I have with the Inquisitors is, they were introduced back in 2015 for Star Wars Rebels, and had some comic books at the same time, and we still don't really know much about them as an organization. We don't know why they are fifth brother and seventh sister. We don't really know those answers, and maybe there is some more information for me to glean from the Rise of the Red Blade book that I have yet to read, but I don't think so, because again, we also don't have the chronicled ending of the Inquisitors as well. Obviously, later in this season of Rebels, they will suffer a significant blow against them, and is that the end? Because it's unstated at this point. It's unknown. We don't have that really documented in any conclusive fashion, and I find that frustrating at this point, because back in the day, back before Disney, I feel like this all would have been covered by now. This would be something that we know how this organization functions, and have their end, again, documented, because they don't seem to be around during the time of the rebellion from episode 4 on. So is this the end coming up later in season 2? I guess we'll have to wait and see, right? Everything, the new tendency of Disney Star Wars seems to be to leave things as open-ended as possible in case they want to go back and explore it later. And maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing. I'm not entirely certain. I just have my feelings on it. But that's a little bit of my 2 cents on the Inquisitors and why I think they're sort of limited in their potential. And they really don't ever seem to kill anyone of import. I just read the 4-issue Inquisitor miniseries from Marvel, and basically it was 3 issues of the Inquisitors failing to kill a Jedi, and then Vader having to come and do it for him. So, again, I don't know. They seem sort of not good at their jobs, would be my short take on it. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into our episode for this week. This is Star Wars Rebels Season 2, Episode 5, Always Two There Are. Original air date was October 28th, 2016. Written by Kevin Hops, directed by Brad Rao, our primary cast, Taylor Gray, Vanessa Marshall, Freddie Prinze Jr., Tia Sakar, Steve Blum, Dave Filoni, T. Bradley Baker, David Oluwelo, Philip Anthony Rodriguez as fifth brother, and Sarah Michelle Gellar as seventh sister, also known as the wife of Freddie Prinze Jr. So there you go. Our plot for this week's episode. Ezra, Sabine, Zeb, and Chopper travel to an abandoned medical station. Indeed they do. All right, friends. Let's go ahead. Let's get into the episode. You know what that means. It's time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off. You're going to have to relocate the covert. This is the way. This is the way.
So as we stated, the introduction of Seventh Sister, the full introduction of Fifth Brother, we know that Seventh Sister is a Mary Elan. She walks around with her ID9 Seeker droids. That's more information than we know about Fifth Brother. Fifth Brother, despite being created, almost 10 years ago now, is still of an unknown species. which I find another thing I find somewhat frustrating about new Star Wars is that why don't we know the answer to some of these things? I wish we did. I'd love to know more about all these characters. I don't understand why we can't get background information. Things as simple as identifying said species. He has a cool helmet like Endo, but he's not Endo. Not of the Endo's people. Embo, excuse me. So, yeah, I guess I just really always want more information about Star Wars characters. And the best way to enrich the galaxy far, far away is to give us this information, give us more stories, help us, help flesh these things out so that we can kind of attach more to the characters that you guys are creating, unless they're just disposable, which I can't help but think some of these Inquisitors really, really are. So that's odd. But a lot of big stuff coming up for these two Inquisitors later on in this season, and we'll just leave it at that. If you know where we're going, you know where we're going. The episode opens. We're catching up with our rebel friends. Ezra's trying to do some more Jedi training with Kanan. You got Rex and Zeb playing Dejarik. Sabine doing Sabine things at a computer terminal. And the family dynamic is strong in play here, as Sabine urges Chopper to lock his clamps down on the deck so that Ezra can't practice the Force by levitating Chopper. Rex is attempting to teach a lesson to Zeb about discipline while playing Dejarik. And again, the family dynamic is strong, but so is the bickering in the beginning of the episode. So we can't we can't go from there. In Rex's conversation with Zeb on discipline leads to a conversation with Kanan about discipline and why the discipline of a soldier is more persuasive, stronger than the discipline of a Jedi Knight. And it's an interesting conversation. I don't want to get too deep into it because it's a lot of back and forth, and it is all about the character's perspective on things. But Rex continues his habit of dropping Anakin Skywalker references without naming Anakin Skywalker. So that's sort of an interesting thing. Hera enters the room. They want to go look for some medical supplies from an old medical station that has been abandoned since the Clone Wars. This is all based off of information that Rex has provided to them. So Sabine, Zeb, and Chopper are dispatched to go. Ezra decides to join them because he's already worn out of the conversation between Rex and Kanan. So our team is assembled, and they dispatch in the Phantom to the abandoned medical station like we've seen from old episodes of Star Wars, The Clone Wars. Now, of course, as our heroes arrive, the station's powered down, but Rex's codes get them into the station. But there's no power, so they want to change that. Chopper, on his own intuition, decides to power up the entire station. This trips an alarm, which alerts the Empire that the facility is now in use. Fifth Brother is on the ship with Callus, and Fifth Brother says, "This is the moment. These are the rebels we are looking for, and I am going to go, and I don't need any of you Imperial fools to go with me. I got this. This is a Force thing." So, Fifth Brother dispatches himself. and there you go. That's that. Now we know our Fifth Brother is on his way. Our heroes are in impending trouble. Except, we start to find out there's somebody else already on the station. We don't see them at first. We see just the small ID9 seeker droids, which are they are similar visually to the probe droids, except much, much smaller. They kind of be like a combination of the probe droid with all its many tentacled arms, and it's sort of like the head of like one of the pit droids. So very unique design. I think they're very fun-looking droids, honestly. I sort of dig them quite a bit. But they got to go look for the medical supplies. The files in the computer system are corrupted, so they know that the medical supplies are there. They just don't know where to look, so they have to go hunting. And this is when we first catch glimpses of those ID9 seeker droids. And then they full on attack Chopper, and get their little metal tentacle hands all up inside his business, and he's calling for help. Now, also in this episode, we established earlier on that Ezra is pretty good getting pretty good at understanding what Chopper says. So that's a development for this episode, because when Chopper calls for help, Ezra is able to recognize that Chopper is calling for help and that something's wrong, and they have to go back to help him. I also want to mention there's a lot of playful bickering between Zeb and Ezra yet again in this episode, sort of helping set the stage for the coming conflict, right? Because like Zeb's sort of feeling kind of useless in this episode, not feeling real good about things, doesn't feel like he's in the know on a lot of things in this episode. But Zeb's going to be the one who gets his chance to shine in this episode. And it's an interesting choice by Ezra when they go back to help Chopper. They want to use the vents. So it's a small vent. So Ezra and Sabine are able to access said vent. Now, according to Ezra, this will be a faster, more direct route back to Chopper. But Zeb, being the big Lasat that he is, gets stuck in the vent. And that's where we kind of leave him for the next few minutes. Because as we get back, we find that Chopper's been attacked, and that off in the distance, further down the hallway, in the darkened corridor, we see the shape of the ID-9 seeker droid, and behind the silhouette of who will soon be revealed to be Seventh Sister. Now, it's never really clearly stated if Seventh Sister anticipated their arrival to this station and was waiting for them. It seems like she was there ahead of them, but that's never clearly stated in the episode, which I find to be somewhat frustrating. But I guess we can just write it off to, quote-unquote, the Force leading her there. But it's never really stated. She seems to be more of a cunning Inquisitor than Fifth Brother thus far. Fifth Brother, with his big hulking size, appears to be more of a physical powerhouse, while Seventh Sister, more of a strategist, right? More of a thinker, a planner. She has a plan here to use Ezra to draw out his rebel friends, and as we ultimately learn, Ahsoka Tano. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Seventh Sister basically hunts him down, scares the crap out of him, because this is again the first time that our heroes are finding out there's more than one Inquisitor, and that throws them for a loop. And then when they're trying to evade Seventh Sister, we find Fifth Brother is now on site as well, and so now there are two Inquisitors. Like the title says, always two there are, even though that is a reference to the Sith by Master Yoda from The Phantom Menace. I guess it's just sort of, I don't know. They're making that reference for our sake, even though we know there are more Inquisitors than just two. But again, we'll get there. We're not. that's further down the line. This is our first time seeing other Inquisitors together, besides just the Grand. Though you would think the Grand Inquisitor, the implication would be, yes, there are more. Anywho. Ezra makes a sacrifice to save Sabine. He gets captured. And Fifth Brother wants to kill him. Again, as I said, Seventh Sister wants to use him as bait to lure out the others. So she dispatches Fifth Brother to find Sabine. And again, this begins our first taste of sort of the infighting that exists amongst the Inquisitors for rank and status. As we'll find out via a conversation with Seventh Sister and Ezra, the death of the Grand Inquisitor has led to, quote-unquote, opportunities. And I guess that would be to fill the void of the Grand Inquisitor, to step up and be the new Grand Inquisitor. Curry favor with Vader, curry favor with the Emperor, perhaps. But again, I remind you all, we all know that Palpatine doesn't share power. So he seems to be letting these Dark Jedi exist for the sake of watching them squabble and claw and scratch for scraps at his table. Seems like not a fun job, but what do I know? So Sabine goes back, gets Zeb out of the vent he's stuck in, and now they have to formulate a plan to attack these Inquisitors, to defend themselves from these Inquisitors. Again, Fifth Brother in hot pursuit, and they spring a trap for him, right? They're gonna blow him up. Except Fifth Brother picks up on said traps, brings the bombs back, throws them at Sabine, and knocks her unconscious. So Fifth Brother takes her back. Zeb is left for the ID-9 seeker droids that Seventh Sister sent with him, and they attack Zeb. And Zeb's able to fight off the ID-9 Seeker droids, but not before getting a lot of electric shocks. And it does not look fun. But Zeb's able to destroy them. And he also is able to find the medical supplies, some medical supplies that they were there looking for. And they head back to the shuttle. Now, I think we're supposed to get the impression that Zeb links up with Chopper, has the medical supplies, and he's just going to take off. I don't buy that for a second. I never bought for a second that Zeb was just going to leave him there. So he hatches a plan to lure the Inquisitors away from Sabine and Ezra. And it's a solid plan. I can't fault it too much. He makes a false communication that reinforcements are on the way, that they'll bring Kanan and Ahsoka and all these things, but to meet him in Base 6 and keep their chin up. So when they get to Base 6 and there's no ships around, it takes Ezra a moment to figure out that Zeb's on the ceiling with the Phantom. And then he launches into an attack. Firing blaster shots from the Phantom into the Inquisitors, who they're able to deflect very easily. Ezra and Sabine, after Ezra recovers his lightsaber, get onto the Ghost, and they're about to make their escape. Except the Inquisitors use the Force to hold the ship in place, while Seven Sister also begins to close the docking bay doors. Except Seven Brother, for reasons, maybe because he needed two hands to block more blaster shots from Sabine, lets go of the ship to deflect said blaster. Seven Sister can't hold the ship by herself, so our friends are able to make their escape. And the Inquisitors are mad. They're not happy about it. They are not happy about it. Again, more reason for these two Inquisitors to fight amongst themselves. Our friends make it back to the Rebel fleet. We see Rex and Kanan engaged in a game of Dejarik, and Kanan winning, and Rex trying to pass it off as a lesson that he was trying to pass on to Kanan. So, again, the family dynamic strong at play through this episode at the beginning and at the end, kind of bookending the show. But as Sabine and Zeb and Ezra return with Chopper and a small stash of medical supplies, they very bluntly ask Kanan, is like, how come you didn't tell us there were more Inquisitors? And he's like, what? So yeah, we find out Kanan was unaware. He's going to let Ahsoka know. We don't know if Ahsoka was aware that there were more Inquisitors at this point, though she must, right? Because that's how she got her lightsabers, because she's already fought one. And depending on whether you want to believe the story from the Ahsoka novel or from the Tales of the Jedi short, she has had an encounter with an Inquisitor to this point. So, she's either keeping that a secret or didn't think it was a big deal because they're pretty easy to beat. Shots fired at the Inquisitors. But yeah, this changes the dynamic of the show moving forward, as now we have more than just Vader after them. We know that the Inquisitoress is alive and well, even after the death of the Grand Inquisitor at the end of Season 1 of the show. And that's the episode of the show. I found this one to be fairly solid. It's not amazingly cool. Seven Sister is an interesting villain. Fifth Brother is just sort of like a hulking menace. Doesn't seem super great, but again, visually dynamic character. I give the episode 7 buckets. Again, solid enough entertainment. Begins to sort of expand the mythology a little bit more of the Inquisitors and kind of showing this world they inhabit, this corner of the galaxy. But again, to me, now 9 years later, almost 10, almost 10 years later, it's still an organization that lacks a lot of definition to me. And again, I don't know if that's by design, but I find it somewhat frustrating that 10 years down the road, we still don't know much about the beginnings and the end of the Inquisitores. It sort of frustrates me to an extent, and the fact that like we still have members of this group that are of species not yet identified. Again, I find that frustrating too. Like let's make a plan here, people. Let's make a plan and stick to it. 7 buckets. I do believe things pick up a little bit more next week in Rebels, but Season 2 is a long season, so it does sort of wax and wane a little bit. So this one is a little slower, but still some good stuff, but some questions too. Again, I don't know why Seventh Sister was there ahead of schedule. The Force? Sure, why not? All right, but I think that does it for us on our 300th episode of Mandovision. I thank you guys all so much for the support over the years once again. You guys are truly, truly the best. Go out there, be great Star Wars fans to each other. Be kind and supportive and inclusive of others in Star Wars who are, maybe they have different ideas about Star Wars than you do, but that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Star Wars is for everyone. That's my reminder to everybody out there that it's like Baskin Robbins. There are 31 flavors of Star Wars, and one will make everybody happy. It doesn't matter which flavor you like the best. But again, be kind, supportive of each other. Be great Star Wars fans. And we'll be back next week to talk about another episode of Star Wars Rebels, unless something amazing happens in the news. And then we'll talk about that. But yeah, we'll be back next week. You know we will. We're pretty consistent, gosh darn it. And that's a good thing. So with that being said, Bucketheads, take care of each other. Thank you for these amazing 300 episodes we've knocked out. I think we're going to do at least 300 more. And I'm glad you guys are all here for the journey, for the ride, because I would not be doing it without you. Thank you again. A quick reminder to make sure you're following us on the socials at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter/X and Instagram. My goodness. We are Mandovision at Blue Sky. You can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Please make sure you're liking, subscribing, following, and sharing the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. And another great way to support the show, sweet 5-star reviews. So insanely helpful. Thank you guys, everyone who's taken the time to do so. Really appreciate it. If you're listening on the Apple Podcasts, thank you. All right, Bucketheads, let's get out of here. We'll be back next week. But remember, in the meantime, this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
I would like to see the baby.